Oh, good evening and welcome everybody, and thank you for muting. I think when we were unmuted last time it goes all echoey, but this is a casual interaction, so please just unmute yourself if ever you think of a question or want to comment. Please don't hold back, it's definitely a two-way thing here. And yeah, so apart from Katya, hopefully everybody else has their aroma sticks. And so just before we begin inhaling them, for anyone who wasn't here in the first episode, I nearly said, in the first aroma workshop, I'm just going to do a real quick, brief safety overview, if I may. And that is to say, when you get your aroma sticks, we're just very gently wafting them under our nose rather than deeply inhaling, because the essential oils are highly concentrated and it's just enough to introduce your system to the oils just by a gentle waft. The information that I'm going to share with you today is a kind of collection of my 30 years of working with essential oils and loving them. The majority of my experience is actually with skincare, having worked for lots of big cosmetic houses, including Decléor and Aromatherapy Associates, and some smaller product houses such as Ylang and Made for Life Organics, all who work with essential oils in skincare and wellness. But in the last kind of 10 years, I have focused much more in how the essential oils can be supportive on emotional side of things as well. Excuse me. So I'm going to attempt to give you both sides of the oils, both physical and emotional as well. And the information imparted is for your personal use. And in terms of safety, the essential oils, if you want to use them on your skin, should always be diluted. And the easiest way for me to share how best to dilute them safely is in a carrier oil. So they're not dilutable in water, they'll just sit on the surface. So you need to grab anything like coconut oil or sweet almond oil, even extra virgin olive oil if you've got that to cook with. And the ratio, which is generally safe, is whatever millage of base oil you have. So let's say it's 10 ml, 2 teaspoons full. You would put no more than half the amount of drops of essential oil in there. So in the case of 10 ml of base oil, you would put no more than 5 drops of essential oil in there. Just give it a little twizzle with a cocktail stick or with a spoon. You don't have to shake them vigorously. And then you can safely apply that as a body oil, or even add to your bath water. Whoops, I've just realised there's oil in that and I've poured it all over my lap. Well done, Laura. Oh dear. The only way you would work with essential oils without diluting is in a diffuser, which you might be able to see behind me. I've got an old-fashioned one where the tea light is underneath and it heats the water and evaporates the essential oils that you put on top of the water. Same with the electrical ones, so that it kind of diffuses a lot of steam out. So you would just put pure essential oil in that way. When you're diffusing essential oils in your home, just be aware that visitors and guests that come in may not be suitable for use for essential oils. And by that I mean be cautious around pregnancy with yourself and maybe your friends that visit you, and just be aware that sometimes pets and animals will want to find a way out if you're using lots of oil. So just keep the door open if you've got pets around. So that's it in terms of safety. I've chosen essential oils that are on the GRAS list, which means generally regarded as safe. So there's none on there that are too shockingly bad for anybody at all. In fact, they're all very, very good. I've just got a question, I think, on the chat, which I think, although I can't see the chat, let me close out participants and look at chat. There we are. How long can we leave the diffuser on for? Thanks for asking. That is, I would check with the manufacturer's instruction, because they all depend how quickly they diffuse it and how big your vat is. But I tend to use it for no more than about 30 minutes at a time, to be honest with you, and give myself a break. Maybe use it 3 or 4 times throughout the day. I have one in my bedroom that I have on 30 minutes before I go to bed. And then I have one in the kitchen for air purification, and I have one in the lounge as well. But I would always take a break in between. So I'd say between 30 minutes to 45 minutes. That's that's what I would suggest. I hope that helps. There we go. I'm just going to get rid of the chat. Here we go. All right. So the first essential oil that I'm going to begin with is called Petitgrain. I think it's in an orange inhaler for you. Petitgrain. So what we're going to do is just gently get to know the character of the oil by introducing it to your sense of smell, and it's going to hit your olfactory bulb and your brain is going to rifle through and decide whether or not it's smelt this before and whether or not it is a pleasant experience for you. It's related, it goes into your limbic system, which is governing your emotions and memory. So your brain, give your chance of brain to have a think about this. If it hasn't recognized full-on Petitgrain, it may recognize one of the chemical parts of it. And so, for example, you might think, oh, it reminds me of suntan cream or sun cream that always reminds me of holidays or something like that. So just give your brain a chance to identify that. And Petitgrain for me holds a special place in my heart because it's the first essential oil I truly got to know, and I had quite a dramatic, well, not dramatic, but beautiful experience with it. I was about 18 years old. I was training to be a beauty therapist full-time at college, and I'd had my tonsils taken out. I was probably about 18 or 19, and I'd gotten an infection, and it was going on, and I felt really, really under the weather, really hacked off that I couldn't be out with my friends and doing the normal teenage things. And my sister bought me this Petitgrain essential oil from the Body Shop when they used to sell pure essential oils back in the day, in the early 90s. And she said, oh, this is supposed to make you feel better and help you feel better. And I remember opening it and smelling it. And I was so shocked. It didn't smell like a perfume. It didn't smell like a fragrance. It smelled green, fresh, slightly sweet, slightly fruity. It basically smelled like nature. And I just thought, I love this. It reminds me of walking through, you know, a tree-lined avenue with orange trees. Not that I've ever done that, but that was exactly what it conjured up. And I used it in the bath that evening. And the change of attitude I had when I emerged from my bathroom, aged 18, was incredible. I genuinely felt calmer. I felt relaxed, a little bit chilled, and it just made me feel more optimistic and kind of like, okay, this is happening and it's fine. And to this day, as much as I know about Petitgrain now, that's exactly what it's good for, helping you recover. So excellent in terms of convalescence. If there is an infection or a chronic condition that's kind of hanging around, essential oil Petitgrain can really, really help you think of resting as an action. So rather than buzzing around thinking I've got to push myself through this, it kind of helps give you an optimism and a relaxation that enables you to go with the flow a little bit more and really help yourself to recover and feel better. It is calming and uplifting. It comes from the orange tree. So there's 3 essential oils that we get from the orange tree. We get sweet orange from the rind of the fruit, and that's really zingy and really zesty, very sparkly. We get neroli from the blossom of the tree or the flower of the orange, and that is one of the most expensive essential oils you can get. Excuse me, really high vibe. Really, really beautiful, Kelly. It looks like you've had experience of that before, yeah. And neroli is the one you go to where there's sort of panic or depression or anything that needs clearing. And Petitgrain kind of sits between the two. Petitgrain comes from the leaves of that same tree, or the twigs even as well. So it is very good at gently lifting the blues, I would say. So if you're a little bit in the doldrums, Petitgrain can lift the mood, lift the vibe. My friend, I recommended it for her son who was having a real problem with seasonal affective disorder. So he started inhaling Petitgrain just through the inhaler and also through steam inhalation during the winter. And he said it's like night and day. I love this. It's really helped me. So I thought, oh, that's maybe a good tip for other people perhaps to pass on. So yeah, I always reach for Petitgrain as well when there is overthinking going on. So excellent for worriers, and or if you're just going through a phase of worrying and overthinking. And it is a little bit good for if you're a bit self-absorbed. I say that gently, and I think maybe teenagers, dare I say, that kind of thing where it's all about them. And maybe they just need to lift themselves out of that a little bit. Probably goes back to my teenage experience of Petitgrain, to be quite honest. I'm probably projecting all of that onto it, but it just made me feel so good. It's a natural deodorant as well, and so it's very good at keeping the air clean and fresh. And I've been known to drop a few drops on a couple of tissues and stuff my stinky trainers with it, or shoes, and it just infuses the smell into said stinky trainer, and it can help to clear them. Don't pop it directly in your shoe because it's too strong, it'll rot them, but on a tissue it's quite useful. Excuse me. A reminder that the essential oils are sometimes 100% stronger than the dried herb equivalent. Not that you get a herb from Petitgrain, but they are extremely, extremely strong. The last thing I'd say about Petitgrain is it's very good for disappointment, or if you're feeling a bit crestfallen, or something hasn't gone quite as well as you'd hoped it would, really. And I tie that in a little bit with the nervousness. It's good for nervous tummy. You know, you get that flittery nervousness. And in the same vein, it's good for stage fright. So if you've got to do a presentation, you don't want to use, and you're very nervous of it, you don't really want to use something like vetiver or chamomile because it's kind of too sedative. You want your wits about you. You want to remain upbeat and engaging, but you also want to have a bit of a handle on the nervous twitches in the tummy. So Petitgrain is a great partner for public speaking, presentations, good for work, I guess. Has anybody used Petitgrain before, or has anybody got any thoughts about Petitgrain or anything they want to share? Excuse my throat. No? Okay, I'm just going to check that I've said everything I want to say about it. Oh, confusion. Oh, and the other thing, I meant to say this when I was saying about neroli. If there has been, and again, maybe teenage thing here, if there's been an emotional meltdown, Petitgrain is very good at clearing those kind of emotional meltdown vibes, a bit like neroli. So it just helps you kind of collect yourself again, if it's you that's had the meltdown, or if you want to diffuse it around where there's been a bit of tension. It's very good at diffusing that and helping restore kind of faith in yourself or in others if it's you that's had the meltdown, basically. I do have to say that it's one of the most value for money essential oils you can get. It's really inexpensive, Petitgrain, and it covers a massive range of things for you, from nervousness, as we've mentioned, to cleansing, clearing. It does help support your immunity, and it does help to keep you calm and relaxed. There's loads of things that Petitgrain's good for, including for your skin. It's a very good balancer and cleanser for your skin. You'll often find Petitgrain is in skincare alongside neroli because they don't smell dissimilar. So they'll, old cynic me, having been around in this industry for a long time, they may promote something as a neroli oil or a neroli product, and then you look at it and there's also Petitgrain in it as well. Less neroli and more Petitgrain because they've got similar properties and a similar fragrance. But yeah. We're going to meet Patchouli next, and I have to say Patchouli and Petitgrain make a great partnership in a bath or in a salt scrub. It blends basically with everything. It's a little bit like lavender. I'm not a massive fan of lavender personally. I'm not keen on the smell, so I would tend to reach for Petitgrain more often than lavender, but it blends with most other things. It will uplift citrus, and it will uplift base notes like patchouli, and it partners the citruses and herbs pretty well as well. So an all-round good egg, I'd say. Okay, so if there's no feedback or thought on that, I'll move on to patchouli. Right, there must be people that know patchouli. I'll ask anybody to share if you do. This is patchouli leaves. I'll start off by saying that. So it's not a great thing to show you, but the reason I'm showing you is that patchouli dried can be used as incense, and that was one of its original uses. You would put that into incense sticks or onto charcoal burners, and it creates this very pungent aroma. And in the Victorian era, when linens and fabrics were sent from India, they would put patchouli leaves in amongst the linens when they were being shipped across, to prevent them becoming moth-eaten or attacked by insects. And to this day, it's still renowned to be an excellent anti-mozzie and anti-moth thing. So if you're dining outside, you might want to put your diffuser on with a bit of patchouli and geranium, would be my recommendation for anti-insect repellent. But of course, when you opened the linens and the fabrics, you would smell the patchouli. And so it became very associated with luxury, because there were all these beautiful fabrics and cashmeres and everything coming across, smelling of patchouli. And it was a real smell of luxury, and it became a perfume in its own right. It has an incredibly strong aroma. It's really earthy, like massively earthy, almost sort of rooty, musky but sweet. It does go a little bit sticky if you've had it a long time, and it does stain your linen, so don't use the essential oil directly on clothing because it can stain. But it's and it does have connotations with the sort of hippie era, because they used to wear it as a fragrance on its own, in its own right. But if you can kind of park the hippiness and look past that, apart from my 3 essential oils that I shared with you last time in terms of good for skincare, which were frankincense, geranium, and rose, patchouli is in my top 5. Patchouli is amazing at regenerating and healing a rough skin, a flaky skin, a really dry skin, even like cracked heels on your feet, or gardener's hands, or calloused hard-working hands. It really helps to regenerate a very dry skin and repair it, basically. So even if you don't like the smell of it, I challenge you to get yourself a little bottle of it and add a little tiny bit of it into a basic hand cream or a cold cream base, E45 or something like that. Maybe drop a couple of other essential oils in and a tiny bit of patchouli, so that you get the effect of patchouli without that pungent aroma. And the way in which you can do that is actually use a cocktail stick, a little wooden cocktail stick, and dip it into the end of your oil there and just stir it into the blend at the last minute. So you don't get a full drop, you just get maybe half or quarter drop. This happens a lot in skincare. So you buy a product, a body cream or face cream, and look at the ingredients, and patchouli will be on there at the very bottom because it's so good for skincare, but they use it in small amounts because they don't want to give something that lots of people maybe aren't so keen on the smell, if that makes sense, so they hide it. The other thing that is slightly off, but in fine fragrance, in perfumery, you'd be amazed at how often patchouli is used and you don't know it. So Victor and Rolf Flower Bomb use patchouli. The Jo Malone, I think it's Freesia and Pear, which is a really fresh, bright, natural fragrance, has got patchouli in it. Ones that are more obvious is not Coco Chanel, sorry, although it probably has, Coco Mademoiselle and Chance from Chanel. And the reason they use patchouli in fine fragrance is it acts as what's called a fixative, which is useful for you if you want to make your own blends, because what a fixative does is it's almost like the conductor in an orchestra. So you have blends of essential oils, and patchouli will help slow down the evaporation of your top notes, which are the ones that you smell first but evaporate quickly. So patchouli will help your essential oils that are evaporating quickly to do that less slowly, so it lasts longer. It also has a muting effect on the middle notes. So sometimes a middle note such as jasmine, clary sage, or Ylang Ylang is really overpowering, and patchouli will mute it a little bit and make sure that we're all singing as a synergy rather than kind of shouting and fighting for attention in a blend. So if you like to try blending at home, again, I would add a dash of patchouli into most blends just to keep everything singing from the same hymn sheet, as it were. So in terms of physically and emotionally, I've got a lot of friends, obviously, who are aromatherapists, excuse me, and they found it really useful in cases of chronic fatigue. And they found it really, really helpful at kind of gathering your energy back to you. And although I don't have direct experience of that myself, I do find that I've recommended it to people who are real givers, you know, real empaths, people that are giving the whole time. Really good for carers and people that are maybe looking after elderly parents or young children, and they're just naturally over giving of themselves. If you tend to do that or know someone that does, patchouli almost brings you to heal a little bit and reminds you that you can't pour from an empty cup. So you need to top up your own energy before you can give so dramatically to everybody else. And patchouli is really good at bringing you back into yourself because it's grounding and centering. I'd probably use the word anchoring. It's really useful if you tend to live with your head in the clouds sometimes. Very useful if you need to get going on a project and you need to get practical. Patchouli can help with that and can help you, as I say, gather your energy and ground you. And a little bit like vetiver, if you do meditation and you do the body scan, is another good one to use if you're into doing that as well, because it gets you in touch with your body again. On the emotional side also, it's useful for forgiveness, both for yourself and for others. Really helps you forgive and let go. It is very good as a diuretic. So again, in partnership with maybe geranium or juniper, I nearly said Jupiter, juniper, it can help to boost up a sluggish circulation, or more likely a lymphatic circulation, so good for travel. Not only for the insect thing, but for swollen ankles is what I'm looking for after a flight. It's excellent for that. Good for bloating of the stomach as well. It's a little bit good for digestion, although there are better ones. Very, very stabilising in general terms is patchouli. Any thoughts on patchouli? There must be somebody who's used it as a fragrance or has come across it. Is there a love or hate deal?
I really don't like the smell, so I was going to ask you if you want to use it on cracked heels, for example. Are there any particular other oils you would mix it with to mask the smell?
Yeah, to mask the smell. Yeah, good idea. It is really good with geranium, or maybe even, I mean, peppermint's not great for skin, but for heels, it might be quite nice, and for lower legs. And it is quite a strong scent. So maybe a dash of patchouli and then peppermint and also geranium. That might be a nice blend, really, for feet.
Try that. Yeah.
Or maybe do it in a foot bath so that it's not actually on your skin, so that you're not continuing to smell it. And maybe it's better in a foot bath. That might be nice, or a spritz. But do try and hide it, because, as I say, it is such a powerful essential oil for moisturisation and skincare. It's fantastic. Gita, did you want to say something?
Yes. Can you use it for headaches?
Yeah, there's probably better ones, but because it is de-stressing, it will be nice for headaches because it's calmative and de-stressing. So especially if it's a tension headache, it would be really nice. And again, maybe with peppermint, just on the temples. Just be careful it doesn't go near your eyes. That might be also a beautiful blend to use, or around the back of the neck. Yeah, sometimes you have to be a bit careful with peppermint, especially if you use homeopathic remedies, because it can counteract the effects of some homeopathy. And sometimes peppermint's a little bit stimulating on the skin, but if you use just a little tiny bit of it, dilute it well, that might be really nice for a headache. Yeah.
Thank you.
Definitely. Do you like the smell of it?
It's not too bad, actually. Reminds me a little bit of camphor, funnily enough.
It does have camphorous notes, doesn't it? That is true.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's what
slightly.
it reminds me of.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little bit like cough sweets now you've said that. A little bit. Definitely.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
I just wanted to ask, Laura, in terms of like for bloating, you said for that, would that be still mixing in the carrier oil and then massage it onto the abdomen, or?
Yeah, that's the best idea, definitely. So 10 ml of carrier oil and 5 drops of essential oil. So you could either have 5 drops of patchouli if you really like the smell, or maybe 1 patchouli, 3 geranium, and 1 maybe juniper is quite good, although it's quite strong. But for bloating, it's excellent. Yeah.
Is it better to do it in the daytime than the evening? Because it's diuretic, I don't want to keep waking up to a toilet. Probably won't be the best.
Sorry, I only caught half of that, Josh. Okay,
So yeah, would it be best to use that as a massage oil in the morning than the nighttime?
Oh, either with that blend, yeah. Okay. None of those oil, those that I mentioned are very balancing, actually. So they will be ideal for either end of the day. In fact, if you wanted to make it a nighttime blend, I would maybe use a bit of vetiver or Roman chamomile as a sedative. Or if you wanted to brighten it up for a morning wake up, maybe a citrus would always be good. As a general rule, citrus is awakening and uplifting. Or we have got black pepper coming later, which is another unusual, well, it's not an unusual smell, it's a very common smell that you'll know, but it's very good for digestion and bloating also. So you might want to put a twist of that in as well.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Okay, so we're hit and miss with patchouli. Let's move on to Ylang Ylang, which is Cananga odorata genuina. And I have to share excitedly with you that this particular one from Oshadi that you've got in your inhalers is something called Ylang Extra, which is a little bit like extra virgin olive oil in that it's the most premium Ylang you can get. It's the first pressing. And so it's very strong, very powerful, but really beautiful. Well, I hope you think it's beautiful. It certainly is when you dilute it down. And Ylang is a beautiful flower from a tropical tree. And it grows wild, and it is most famous as being an aphrodisiac, actually. So I won't skip over that. I will just say that it is used as that because it helps you to relax, calm down, release inhibitions, go with the flow. It's quite exotic, as you can smell, quite floral. So I think it's quite feminine, personally. I tend to refer to it as my goddess oil because I think it makes you feel really empowered and really quite beautiful. I don't know if can you feel beautiful? I don't know if I'm explaining that very well, but it makes you feel kind of loved and special. I think it is a beautiful essential oil to include in a blend if you're feeling like you want to feel better and in touch with yourself. Whereas I would have used the word happy for Petitgrain and for the citrus oils, for Ylang I'd use the word joy. So it's a little bit more mature. It's a little bit more of a deeper emotion that you will stimulate with Ylang and can really, really help you feel abundant. So if you're doing any gratitude work or you're feeling particularly ungrateful for whatever reason, it can really instill thoughts of abundance and thankfulness and gratitude. It's a really beautiful oil for getting you in touch with that, and excellent if you're into manifestation. A great oil to burn if you're doing your gratitude diary or you like to do that kind of the secret stuff that's been popular lately. It is quite heady and quite strong, so I'd be cautious when you use it because it can give you a headache with overuse. And because it slows everything down, including a rapid heartbeat, if you tend to have a lower blood pressure, just go really easy on Ylang Ylang and use it really cautiously, because it does lower blood pressure a little bit, just because it tones the heart down a little bit too. Excuse me. It does help regulate the flow of adrenaline, so it just keeps you on an even keel and nice and calm. Oh, there's somebody in the waiting room. Shall I let them in? Felicity is in the waiting room. Shall I do that, Peter? Is that okay? Just going to do that. Oh, there we go. Fab. Thank you. Now I've touched something that I can't. Oh, there we go. Oh, hold on. Sorry, everyone. That's better. Yes, so Ylang Ylang is sometimes referred to as poor man's jasmine, which is the biggest aphrodisiac in the world, but again, about 100 times more expensive than Ylang Ylang. I think that's a bit unfair, because I think Ylang Ylang stands in its own right and gives you a beautiful, calm, soothing, relaxing attitude and outlook, basically. Like jasmine, it is harvested at night. It is a night flower, so it blooms at night and gives off its amazing fragrance at night. So they tend to capture it at its most fragrant to get the essential oil distilled from it. It has been known for years to be good as a scalp tonic, and actually even simply by mixing it with coconut oil, it's really good as a hair conditioner. If you don't want to put it especially on your scalp, you can pull it through your hair as a final rinse with some coconut oil, and it really gives an exotic fragrance and helps to tone the scalp and keep it free from dandruff as well. As long as you don't use too much of it, it's really good for that. On the note of coconut oil, I will just say there's a real sort of phase at the moment for using coconut oil for everything, and coconut oil is great, but there are better oils to use than coconut for your face, because it's not comedogenic. It won't block your pores, but it sits quite superficially on the skin. So it's great in lip balm, it's great as hand balm, great as foot balm, and even as a body lotion. But where your face sometimes will kick out with blemishes or outbreaks, even if you've got very dry skin, coconut oil can exacerbate that. So always with facial skincare, go for a slightly more, maybe a vegetable oil or a nut oil, such as argan oil or rosehip seed oil. That would be they're pricier, but that would be better, and they won't clog your pores, just on that note. But coconut oil in the hair, really lovely. It's, in terms of skincare, it's always been known to balance a congested skin. So even if you've got a T-zone, maybe an oily T-zone, or you get hormonal breakouts, Ylang Ylang is really good to help balance sebum production. So it helps to regulate a combination type skin. Good for anxiety generally, I'd say, because of its calming, slowing down attitude. In that way, it can help you sleep if your anxiety is keeping you awake, and if it's kind of low level anxiety. There are better ones if you get kind of panicky and stressy, but very good if there's a general low-lying anxiety. Good for self-confidence and good for shyness, and particularly good if there is unhelpful emotions, particularly things like shame or guilt. Emotional guilt. It has a great resonance with the sacral chakra, so it can really help if there's hanging around some sort of emotional guilt. I also find it quite good with impatience. If you're a little bit wound up and a little bit, come on, can't wait for this. It's really good at just slowing everything down and allowing you to catch your breath. So any feedback or thoughts on your Ylang Ylang extra, as it is? Oh, I haven't said what it blends with. It obviously blends well with patchouli that we've already just met, and sandalwood and the base oils, the woody oils. It blends really lovely, nicely with that. They kind of tone it down a little bit, and then with the citrus oils, that tends to brighten it up. and maybe offset some of the sweetness, because Ylang Ylang can be a little bit sweet. So that's really nice. I love to blend it with vanilla, although vanilla isn't essentially an essential oil, it's an absolute. I still love the smell of vanilla, and when you put Ylang Ylang with it, it does smell a little bit like Play-Doh, so maybe it kind of reminds me of my youth. But it's quite fun, it is quite nice. And actually, Ylang Ylang with grapefruit can sometimes smell a little bit like bubblegum. It has that kind of fresh, sweet, but camphorous smell as well. Not that you want to smell like bubblegum, I'm sure. But yeah. Oops, sorry everyone, just dropped it. Any thoughts on Ylang Ylang, or shall I move on? We're at 8:10. Gosh, I have been talking, haven't I? Wow. Okay, let's come back down to earth with black pepper as your next one, which I think is in a black inhaler, or it might be in white for some of you. Excuse me, I'm just going to blow out my candle because I realise I've run out of water. It's just started to pop. Sorry about that. Okay, so black pepper, unlike the fresh peppercorns, it doesn't tend to make you sneeze, so don't worry. Hopefully won't make you sneeze, but it is very, very strong. So take care with this one, especially if you've got sensitive skin. And again, I'd use my cocktail stick with this one just to get maybe half a drop if you're using it as a massage oil. I wanted to introduce it to you because it is hands down the best essential oil, in my opinion, for aches and pains. So a very physical oil. If you have got stiffness, even with its natural analgesic and anti-inflammatory effect, it's good for rheumatism and arthritis to massage in. Very good for after exercise, and actually you can use it before exercise because it stimulates the circulation, so it gets your lactic acid moving around and not staying in one place, which is what gives you that ache after physical exercise. And I think it's a very yang oil, so it's full of energy, really, really full of energy. So whilst it's stimulating your circulation, it's also gently stimulating your digestion. So it's a very good one for bloating and for constipation, dare I say. I've had to have this quite a lot lately. I just find it's really useful just to rub on the abdomen and on the tummy for that, or even on the lower back as well. It's really great. It smells kind of spicy. It's difficult to describe the smell without saying it smells like pepper. But it's kind of fresh and warm and dry. It resonates with the solar plexus, but also third eye, Ajna chakra. It's a top note with a bit of middle in it. It stimulates your kidneys quite a lot. So if you have a sensitive or a condition that affects your kidneys, do take extra care with this one, or you're on lots of medication that affects kidney. But used in small amounts, it's still on the generally regarded as safe list. It's a little bit like an exclamation mark in a blend. So you can add it to a beautiful blend, something like lavender and geranium and orange or something like that. And if you add a tiny little dot of black pepper, it gives it a whole nother dimension, and it gets a warmth and a sparkle. And again, fine fragrances use it all the time to give it an extra punch, like an exclamation mark, like I'm here we are. And it's a bit of a twist in that way. If you're really not keen on the smell, or you want to use black pepper but you prefer to use a muted version, there are over 200 types of pepper, and maybe a better choice would be pink pepper if you want something that is a little muted. And pink pepper, I think, is called Chinesmol in Latin, Chinesmol, and it features really prominently in a lot of modern fragrances. And it's yeah, almost a little sweeter and a little more opaque, if I can describe a fragrance as opaque. Black pepper has been used for centuries. It's regarded as the king of spice. We met cardamom last week, didn't we? It's the queen of spice. Pepper is her husband. And pepper was used, I think, in Roman times for paying taxes. So rather than paying in coin, they used to pay their taxes in peppercoins. And peppercoins? That's a new word, peppercorns. So it's always been highly, highly valued and really, really special. And I would say use it like you do in cooking and in your food, just a little twist of it, not too much. I was bought some Epsom salts recently that had an essential oil of black pepper already in them. That's a genius idea. So you can do like we've talked about before, grab a handful of your magnesium flakes or your Epsom salts and blend some black pepper in some oil before adding it to your salts and using it as a salt scrub or a salt bath. That's really good for aches and pains. You might want to put a bit of something more floral or nice smelling in there as well, but even just on its own, it's really useful. It can help with endurance and stamina, and I don't just mean physically, I mean mentally as well. So if you're studying and you need to keep going, or you've got something you need to finish, a project you need to finish, that's good for procrastination and good to burn in an area where you are studying or reading. And it's pretty good antiviral and anti-flu and anti-cold and all of that, although I've got a better one coming, but it is pretty good in that space. And it's also really good for nerve pain. So if there's sciatica or neuralgia, it's a real clinical aromatherapist oil, to be honest, because mostly you see people that want relief from muscular aches and pains, and black pepper's the one to go to. Any thoughts on black pepper?
Hi, Laura. So if you have sciatica, would you blend it in a base oil and just rub it on, or would you put something else with it?
Yeah, you can use it on its own for sure and just rub it in. It's probably always with essential oils somehow, when you mix 2 or 3, it creates a symphony that's more powerful than just a single note. So you could use it in a blend, or you could use it on its own. Probably in a blend with something like rosemary, if you haven't got too much of a high blood pressure problem, that's pretty good for relieving muscles. Even eucalyptus as well. Sorry, not muscles, sciatica, really good. Or I've got one coming up in a minute, Nioli is also really good with black pepper as a blend for something like sciatica.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
really good.
Sorry, I just had a quick
When
question.
you
Oh, sorry.
Oh, so we've got Joshika, I think.
Yep, great. I just want to ask, I'm quite into making blends and things, but I'm thinking of my parents for the black pepper, but my mum has like asthma and other issues. Does that kind of, my dad has high blood pressure, does that affect it? Anyway,
Yeah, black pepper should be okay with asthma, strangely. But yeah, I think just use a very, very small amount of it, and overuse can be too stimulating. So just a very, very small twist of it should be okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
and could that mix up a little bit of rosemary, I think?
Rosemary is quite stimulating, and if there's an elderly person, you have to be pretty careful, as well as with children. And I tend to half the amount of essential oils I would use on elderly people, not suggesting your parents are elderly, but on somebody who anybody over the age of probably about 60, but just to keep it very, very gentle. But stick to your 2.5% blend and it should be fine. Or if it's smelling a bit strong, use your common sense and think, actually I'll add a bit more base oil to start with. You can always build up to more.
Okay. Right, so that's the still same. It's 10 ml, then add about 5 drops. Would that be the same?
Yeah. Not of black pepper. I think that would be too much. Sorry to be slightly complicated on that one, but that's because black pepper is quite stimulating. Maybe you'd have 1 drop of black pepper, couple of drops of rosemary, and 1 other maybe lavender would be nice. Or maybe 4 drops of lavender, 1 of black pepper. That would be good in 10 ml.
All right, great. Thank you.
My pleasure. And Odile,
Laura, yeah, when you mentioned nerve pain, do you know if it has any impact on neuropathy as well?
Yes, I do know about this because I have a little bit of neuropathy. There's some interesting research going on at the moment, actually, specifically, I think, forgive my memory, with black pepper, peppermint and eucalyptus.
Yeah, because I've been given peppermint to use, but I was wondering whether black pepper would work as well.
you. That's really interesting. Let me dig out the research, because there's something on PubMed that I was looking at for neuropathy. Black pepper with neuropathy would be good. The only caution I've got is I'm avoiding it at the moment because of the kidney thing, just because I'm on quite a lot of drugs at the moment. So I need to just be cautious and careful. So it'll be one I use more later down the road in my recovery. But I will post that on the group for you in the group thing, if I can find it. But yeah, good one. Thanks for asking. Excellent. So we're 8:20, so I've got 2 more to do, and I've got Clary Sage. Clary Sage is the next one. My goodness me, what does Clary Sage smell like? To me, I can't get past the fact that it smells like tea, black tea. I don't know if that's just me. I just think it does. Sweet, a little bit herbaceous, a little bit floral, a little bit earthy. It's a middle note, so it's quite strong. And yeah, really like a cup of tea. And I situate Clary Sage as almost sitting down and having a cup of tea with myself or my higher self. So it's pretty good for contemplation. Personally, I found it really useful when I'm finding it difficult to find a solution, where there's a problem or a situation that I'm struggling with, or that's been hanging around a while, or that I'm repeating behaviors and in a bit of a treadmill. Clary Sage is really good at giving flashes of inspiration. So it resonates massively with Ajna, third eye chakra, opening you up to all sorts of possibilities and thoughts and different ways of thinking. And as I say, it can give you flashes of inspiration and help at coming at a problem from a different angle, from a different perspective. It's also massively helpful at creating emotional distance between yourself and a problem. So if you're embroiled in something and so emotionally connected to it, Clary Sage can help you step away from that situation, allow you time to gather your thoughts, filter out everybody else's opinions that may have been thrown at you and all the shoulds and shouldn'ts in terms of what you should and shouldn't do. And Clary Sage can maybe just give you a bit of calm and a bit of clarity on what you could do differently to change things. The very name Clary, meaning Claire, excuse me, and its Latin name Salvia sclaria. The sclaria element is about clarity and clearness. And actually the herb itself has been known historically to be good for using as an eye wash. Obviously never use essential oils near your eyes, but the herb itself, that clarity for keeping the eyes clear and conjunctivitis and stuff. And the salvia element means save or heal. So it's been known for centuries to have a real healing effect. I think it was included in the 9 Saxon herbs as well. I'm not sure, probably. But it's really effective at clearing your mind and giving you some insight and intuition. It has been known, if you're into this, to help you with, how can I put it? Intuition in terms of maybe clairvoyancy and stuff like that, opening your mind to other ways of thinking. Yeah, that's probably the best way to describe that. I find it incredibly euphoric. This essential oil takes me up 1,000 feet really quickly. And yet, in every aromatherapy oil book I've ever read, it says mildly euphoric, gently euphoric. My personal experience is that it's massively euphoric, almost to dizzying heights sometimes. I've been in peals of giggles using Clary Sage. I don't know if it's just me or whether it's, you know, affecting other people like that, but I do find it massively uplifting and happy, and can banish a miserable mood. It really, really can. I find it really helpful. It is very good for premenstrual cramps. It's an amazing muscle relaxant, and it's really good for use and support during the menopause. It kind of mimics estrogen. So it's used often in end-stage labour these days. So it's not recommended for during pregnancy. It's not recommended, no essential oil I would recommend during pregnancy. across the board. I'd suggest you work with an aromatherapist on your own personal case if you want to do that. But it is being used more and more to help end-stage labour, just because it helps with that muscle contraction and release, which is quite useful. For skin, it's good for oily skin and clearing the skin up. And I find it quite useful when I'm kind of feeling overwhelmed. So it's a really beautiful oil if you're feeling a bit like you don't know where to begin. Essentially, I usually end up laughing about things when I think I don't know where to start. Let's have some Clary sage, sit down and contemplate, but end up actually thinking this is quite a laugh. Let's try it a different way. I think that's as much as I can say about Clary sage. It's different from sage. It's safer than sage. Sage is really good, but it's a little bit trickier to administer yourself safely. So Clary sage is a good alternative. It used to be used when brewing beer in the UK back in ye olden day, because it used to enhance the effect of the alcohol, the herb, that is, not the essential oil. And to this day, we say as aromatherapists to avoid drinking alcohol if you're using Clary sage or burning Clary sage, because it can heighten the effect of alcohol and cause you kind of dizziness and you know, that kind of feeling of when you drink alcohol. Not ideal to mix the two. I don't think I've got time for my story because it's 8:24, but I did have a friend who had a real problem with her son doing something that she really didn't want him to do, and she was so stressed out about it and emotionally overcome by it that she would say, I don't know why you're doing it to me, why are you doing this to yourself? And it was like this constant overgoing of the same old problem. And I sort of said, have you tried working with Clary sage? And she did for about a month, and it allows her to come at that problem with some emotional distance. And she actually asked her son, instead of why do you do it, she asked her son, how does it make you feel? What is it you get out of it? And although at first he was resistant, he was like, Mum, why are you suddenly being so nice about this? Why, you know, he's skeptical as most teenagers are. But in time, you know, he opened up to his mum and said, actually, and what it was in a nutshell was that he was on the brink of leaving childhood and becoming a responsible adult. And that was really difficult for him. And he didn't want to let go of an easygoing, you know, childhood without a care in the world. And he was doing this particular action and behavior to get himself in a state of relaxation and not a care in the world. So in actual fact, she introduced him to Clary sage and to vetiver to help him sleep. And I'm not saying that was the answer, but it definitely helped their relationship and the way that they looked at their particular problem together. So I would quite like that. Thank you, Clary sage, for that. And the very last one to finish up with is something called Nioli. Has everyone heard of Nioli? No, I kind of wanted to include it because it is a lesser known essential oil. And the easiest way I can describe it is it's a cousin of tea tree, which I'm sure you probably have heard of, right? But tea tree has that massively medicinal smell, which I find quite off-putting, especially as I spent years waxing people's legs and putting tea tree oil on afterwards. It reminds me of work. So Nioli is the cousin of tea tree. It's a much softer scent. It is softer in its action, but it shares similar properties. So it's massively antiseptic. I believe in France, they still use it as an antiseptic in hospitals. How lovely. Maybe somebody can confirm that for me or not, but I've been told that. Antiviral, antiseptic, antimicrobial, any kind of pathogen, Nioli will help to get rid of. And again, a bit like Petitgrain, helps you recover from viral load and coughs and colds. It's particularly useful in the upper respiratory tract, so catarrh, mucus, sore throat, sinusitis, that kind of thing. Even if earache, you can do your old ear massage that I showed you last time for that with a little bit of Nioli. It's similar a little bit in property to eucalyptus as well, but again, without that very pungent smell. So I tend to use neroli an awful lot, especially in these days. with this pandemic going on. It's really good for your immunity. It gently stimulates the spleen to make blood cells, including white blood cells, which is supportive of your immune system. You can use it in any capacity. I tend to use it in the diffuser mostly, just especially when other people are coming and going in your home. It's a pretty safe oil to use around other people as well. It's very good for skincare, so minor burns, cuts, wounds, stings, bites, again a bit like tea in that way. Excellent for use, careful you don't get it in your mouth, but excellent for use on herpes simplex, what's it called, cold sores, that kind of thing. Just helps them to move on, because that's viral based. Pretty stimulating, strengthens the immune system, and purifying for the skin. Decleor used to use it a lot, actually, not that they used to promote it, but they did, because it just keeps the sort of flora and fauna of the skin healthy and clear and fresh. In terms of mental and emotional, not so much. It kind of clears away the cobwebs of your mind a little bit. It has that clearing, purifying action. So it can help you maybe get clear on what you want to do. It clears your aura as well. You can use it I used to use it in between clients quite a lot, along with frankincense, to clear energy. It's quite good if you're into that kind of thing. And another one to blend with black pepper when we were talking about either sciatica or even bloatedness. It's a great oil to use for that also. So I hope that is a nice insight into your first Nioli meeting, and something a little bit unusual. And gosh, thank you for listening. I feel like I've been talking at you massively. I'm just quite passionate about my essential oils, and I hope that it's been interesting. Are there any questions or any feedback? I can try and help you with anything that you have that's maybe not associated with what I've just talked about in terms of oils.
Laura, can I just ask you, what would be your favourite blend for something for sort of optimism and uplifting?
Oh, that's a nice one. Immediately, I'm already thinking of Petitgrain, just because it's so sunshiny. So I would definitely include that in there. And I would maybe pair it with a citrus. I really like an essential oil called yuzu, which is another unusual one, YUZU. It's a little bit like grapefruit, but a little bit more like a refreshing, zingy, almost like, you know, those refresher sweets. It smells a little bit like that. So blended with Petitgrain, it becomes really sparkling, really uplifting. What else would I use for uplifting? Maybe a dash of Clary sage in that, with its euphoric properties. Not too much, because it can overtake a blend hugely. But yeah, I would say that would make a really nice uplifting blend. It would be good in a diffuser. Really good. Yeah. And Kelly, I don't think you were on the last call, but my tip for sleep is chamomile and vetiver. That's an amazing knockout for getting you to sleep and allowing you to stay asleep. Just on the other end of the scale.
Yes, I'm suffering from hay fever, etc. at the moment, so my sinuses are very inflamed. So so sleep is something I'm missing a little bit. So that's a very good tip. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And chamomile is good for hay fever, as is Nioli a little bit, in terms of freeing up the sinusitis. Yeah, definitely. Sorry, Ideal.
Do you have any alternatives to chamomile? Because I've been using the vetiver, but I know last week you talked about the combination, but I really don't like the smell of the chamomile one. So I was wondering if there was anything else that has similar properties.
I know what you mean. It can be a little bit grassy, can't it? A little bit hay-like, although it does smell to some people appley, which, if you think of that when you smell it, it kind of changes. It's amazing what your mental thought can do. So maybe think of apples when you smell it. No, my usual go-to is something called spikenard for sleep, which is jatamansi in its herbal form. But I think that is just sort of bordering on the endangered species list. It's not endangered, but there's not a ban on it at the moment, but a caution around it at the moment. But if it's already been manufactured and it's available, maybe it's okay to try spikenard. But that's got a very specific smell as well. It's like a cross between patchouli and vetiver. It's very bassy, it's very woody. slightly bitter, but it really does the trick. So that's spikenard. Maybe I can send you an inhaler of it first before you invest, because it's quite heavy, and it might be worth checking if you like the smell. If you're sensitive to chamomile, it might not be an ideal alternative. I mean, the go-to commercially is lavender for sleep, but as I said last time, you can overuse lavender, it can send you the other way. But if you use lavender in a small amount, you may find it blends quite nicely with vetiver, and that might be an alternative for you. Okay. Or even, without going on too much about it, but even petitgrain. I know I've said it's optimistic and uplifting, but it does help calm worries, and therefore, you know, induce sleep in terms if worry and anxiety are keeping you awake. So it might be worth trying that. Okay. Yeah. Anybody else? Or are we about done?
And well, thank you, Laura. Fantastic. I know myself, I took about 2 pages of notes, so it's great. Just again, thank you everybody for spending part of your evening with us, and we'll have the recording out in a couple days. And I guess you'll give us the list of the oils again, Laura, so we can post them on the website, yeah?
I'll send them to you right now. They're all done. They're just
Perfect.
all ready to go. Yeah, so they'll go on the group for sure. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, that's it. So good night, everybody. Have a great rest of the week, and hope to see y'all soon.
Excellent. Thanks,
Okay.
everyone.
Thank you.